Hey everyone, Ariel Adams with aBlogtoWatch Weekly. I'm hosting today because Rick is out of power, quite literally.
No electricity in Scotland.
Maybe, but no, let's go with out of power. Let people make of that what they will.
Yeah, despite the enormous power reserve of a Panerai, he is out of power.
They make a 31-day one now.
Off of it. Yeah,
they do. And it only takes, I think, 128 rotations of the crown to fully wind it. So there's no tool like the Hublots or I think, what was it, Longer, whoever did it. You do it all through the crown and it's only 128 turns.
This is
I know someone who lost a finger to that.
To bring up the April Fools from 2022, which was essentially a power station run by mainsprings. And the idea was that there'd be people like on like a gym, like on bicycles, and that would wind the mainsprings, and that Switzerland's, power plants would be, wound by mainsprings. It's, again, I went into there in a lot of detail. This scientifically can work.
Yeah.
And
imagine
I love
the ratchet sound, when it's like the enormous ratchets on these enormous mainspring barrels.
Yeah, but the thing which I thought was so elegant was that in order to wind them, you'd need human power. And so you would be paid to go to the gym if you were generating electricity. Not a lot, but do you think, and again, smartwatches may have a part of this because they can help manage this whole system, but would it make sense to pay people to exercise? Again, even if it's a small amount.
It's Switzerland. People love to suffer and make others suffer. So I don't think there has to be money involved. It's just part of the culture.
It has to be through guilt. They have to buy.
It's just
this photo, the photo that we're looking at right now of this hypothetical gym generator looks infinitely more enjoyable to run in than many of the Swiss gyms I've seen. So I don't think you need to pay them. Just
we didn't make it depressing enough. Damn.
No. This is way too big. There's open air. Look how much space is between these treadmills. No.
Not allowed.
If you just made this free, there's probably air conditioning here too. Yeah, if you just made this free, people would come to it.
No AC.
Can I describe the average gym that I see when walking by in Geneva? And these are the ones that I'm able to see. I'm sure there's far worse ones. The average gym is essentially this. First of all, imagine a gym that's way smaller than it should be. Like, they take a certain amount of equipment that should be in a certain size space, and no, they take a space far smaller, and they deem it to be sufficient. The facility itself has to be a square room with white plain walls, no decoration, maybe TVs if you're really lucky, but just you might as well be in an office building. They just decided to take out the desks and chairs in any form, not even plants. And
the TVs are broadcasting like some Pakistani soap opera or something like that, on mute.
Maybe. The machines are about as close as can be. And everyone has this look on their face. If you're right, it's sort of this like Calvinist, like I have to suffer a little bit. That's so I can stay in my pants or whatever it is. And no one there is there to be seen. No one's talking to one another. Like, they were told they need to go to the gym and they know what to wear. They're always in the appropriate clothing, but no one seemed to tell them how to design a gym. It's like every time you're in there, it's like there's someone on a speaker saying, "You should be running alongside the lake, you weirdos." Anyways, that's a typical Geneva gym.
Yeah, it really is an accurate description. Yeah.
Because there's not that many, but we've been walking by them for so many years. We have such a crystal clear depiction of them in our minds.
Meanwhile, the Geneva Watch Days website is broken. I'm trying to browse the exhibiting brands, and it's just broken.
Imagine going into one of the unair conditioned gyms in late August in Geneva Watch Days. We could set that up for you.
Thank you.
Choose the watch to wear.
It makes perfect sense that they would have way too much equipment in way too small of a space. The whole ethos of a watch is look how much mechanics we can put into a very small case. And this is a very small case with a lot of machinery in it.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of long power reserve and Rick having lost his, I'm unboxing here from the plastic sandwich here. Oh, it's heavy. It's heavy.
It's a lot of power it needs to hold.
Yeah. So, like, the funny thing is, it's not the Twin Beat 2. Is it the Twin Big Beat? Grand Beat? What were they? Did they end up calling it even a remotely different name?
No, I think it's the same name.
Duo?
They added 5 days of power reserve and gave it a different strap. I can't really tell if the dial's any different because they chose to light it in neon blue and pink lighting in the press
We should
images.
announce what this watch is for people listening that have no clue what we're talking about.
idea.
So Ariel just received, for some reason or another. So you could have you received this for one of two reasons. A, because Vacheron Constantin received us giving just such a hard time to this watch, like last week or the week before that. Or B, because they specifically did not listen and they sent it to you. So which one is it?
We did complain an awful lot that they did not want to tell us the price, even though it was crystal clear that the moment it was going to be released, someone was going to find out. They were going to print it.
Rick found it out.
What does price on request mean when translated into French luxury? Like what are they trying to say? Because it's not price on request.
I think it's just price manipulation between different markets where they try and not say something or behold.
Wouldn't it be funny
something.
if on the price tag it said price on request?
The question mark euro.
I'm trying to see if it has a price.
Well,
They
we
don't
do
always have a price
request.
once in a while.
We do request. That's the thing. When we request and we are declined to give a price, it's a different. That's not price upon request.
I pointed this out to them. It's true. So this is the Vacheron Constantin Twin Beat. This is part of what the Traditionnel collection.
Mm-hmm.
The Traditionnel Twin Beat. This is the second version. The original was from what, 2019? Is that right?
Believe so.
And
So
this
do you
one
have
has,
the same for review for 2 months? Because that's the only way it would make sense. That you put it in a drawer and then you take it out 2 months from now. How does it feel? Tell us.
It's really, you know what I like? I forgot all about this. So the back of it has two different balance wheels. So there's the 5 hertz and the 1.2 hertz. It just switches between two.
Yeah.
And when one is working, the other one just stops, obviously.
Of course.
And one of the hidden pleasures of this watch, honestly, is to go back and forth and see 5 hertz move really, really fast. And then 1.2 hertz, which is barely better than once per second, right? 1 hertz is once per second.
No, 1 hertz is twice per second.
Twice per second? Well,
Yeah. 5 is 10 times.
Well, each motion.
A pair of 1 hertz is a pair of motions. Two semi-oscillations.
I mean, this mainstream barrel is about as big as the one for the spring station. Look at that thing. It's like right out of the picture.
That's pretty cool. Yeah.
All you need is
Same
little
color,
people on
too.
treadmills. And I think one other thing that's worth noting about this one is this is now more of a standard production model. The first one was, I don't want to use the word concept watch, but they really didn't make that many of them. It wasn't something they were selling in mass. So this is more of its formal entry into the catalog. They're still not going to make a lot of these, but it's not, it's not something that is just only going to exist in theory in a couple collectors' hands.
I wonder, do they test these for 2 months at the factory, or are we just supposed to believe that it works?
I think I'm the
that's how it
tester.
is normally. Yeah. Okay.
That's what's going on. Is platinum like the new white gold? Like everything, like platinum's supposed to be like rare and hard to get.
It's cheaper
and I
than
feel
gold.
like
It's been
cheaper than gold. It's harder to work with, but in today's day and age, when you need the gold to make gold, because you have to have gold watches and you need to have some white metal, precious metal ones, platinum's a great alternative. Save the gold for gold. And let's be real, platinum's really cool. So why not?
Well, look forward to the full review at some point of this watch that just happens to have a perpetual calendar. Accidental perpetual calendars, I call it. I mean, it does have a perpetual calendar. I'm just saying, when you look at the watch, it's really easy to completely dismiss that. I wouldn't be surprised if someone could wear this for months and you'd be like, oh, how's a perpetual calendar? Like, well, what do you mean? Like, not even know that's there. Because it's like, it's easy to just miss, which I actually like.
My favorite example is how I do very much believe that the majority of Richard Mille RM11 owners have no idea that it's an annual calendar, and that at 4:30 you have a month display. to tiny display for the month because it's an annual calendar, so it jumps at the wrong time. And at one point I was speaking with this gem setter from Hong Kong and China, actually, who made some of the ultra high-end, invisibly set, full diamond stuff that actually ended up on the wrists of celebrities, sold for, you know, high seven-figure prices, when in fact, you know, they were set in China with diamonds, and the cases were made in China and the diodes were made in China. So it's not like he gem set an original Richard Mille case. It actually was just basically Richard Mille movement inside a wholly fabricated exterior, or HAIYI, if you like. So anyway, and I asked the guy, because he made this beautiful, full, invisibly set dial, you know, isn't it a problem that he covered the month display up? And he had no idea what I was talking about. He said, nobody complained. I'm like, that's great. So you just lost the function of the watch, essentially.
Yeah, and it's just, it's funny, but then we complain about it, right? Like when there's like little things that doesn't make sense, like we won't shut up. It's practically a scandal. Anyways, just I realized I was talking about this watch. It's nice to actually have it on the screen. Sorry. Yes. My hosting duties are so rusty. I'm used to just talking, not showing. But here is the Twin Beat, which again, we'll get to. And that's interesting, Ripley, that it is not a limited edition. Should we update the price to like US? I'm sure that's out there now.
Yeah, if we think it's going to be accurate. One question, did they give you a little purple and pink light to shine on the watch to make it look like the photos?
No, I will not be able to replicate that, unfortunately.
Oh.
You're not going to like just shoot it in a strip club or whatever will generate that type of light?
I have purple lights at home. You don't have purple lights?
Not and pink. And what's it doing on that one above where it's shooting off the crown? There's that lasers.
Maybe.
It's funny. This is like Omega who launched the new Planet Ocean, you know, in blue light.
This is the weirdest one.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. I don't know how to do that. I don't have the lighting.
I like the way that looks. It's just,
but it represents this watch is about to fall on the floor and be destroyed forever. It's like a motion blur. It's just getting away from you.
Or is it shooting up into space? Someone's chucked it.
Either way, the movement's going to be damaged. Let's be honest.
It already
this is not safe. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, Vacheron should disclose in the user manual or something, you know, in which position you should have it at 1.2 hertz, because they should ideally set it up for like horizontal or vertical or something like that, and you would store it in that position so that you have ideal rate and accuracy over the course of the, you know, weeks or months or whatever it is that you store it.
They really should have put the
They didn't send me the whole box with all the stuff.
They really should have put that 1.2 hertz in like a gyro tourbillon, so that way when you were engaged at standby mode, you could get full advantage of the tourbillon as it just sits for the 2 months and you're safe.
Well, I did ironically have a different high-end Richemont watch in the last week, and that is the Heliotourbillon. So the Jaeger-LeCoultre Duometer Heliotourbillon Perpetual, another watch that has a perpetual calendar that simply doesn't need to, but it's there. And that watch also platinum on a platinum bracelet. We don't have coverage of it on the website yet. We do have the original Heliotourbillon, which is going to look a little bit different. I had that for just a couple of hours, but that was crazy, $580,000. But talking about a watch that you just want to look at, so. Yeah, I think Ripley was writing about this in 2024. Now there's a new version, which is a limited edition. So imagine this watch with a gray dial, platinum case, and a new platinum bracelet. And this tourbillon, would you agree that it dances? Would you say this is a dancing tourbillon?
Sort of is, yeah. That's a good description.
Yeah. There's a lot going on. If you like watching little pieces of mechanics move, this is really right up your alley. You kind of keep waiting for the Heliotourbillon to turn into a little Michael Bay transformer or something. It's just this evolving little thing.
Why haven't they done that? Why has there not been like wristwatch versions of Transformers?
Well, there kind of was that ambient. Was it that MBNF robot guardian thing?
No. I meant like the Hollywood version of it. You know, like the Transformer. Like, no, there's no car that really does that, but it looks really cool on film. Did they have a wrist? Maybe there was a smartwatch in one of the Transformers.
There's a phone or something.
Something like that. So
missed opportunity on the watch. Think about all the parts they have.
That would be a cool thing. You get a bunch of popular watches. You know, you have like your Submariner, and you have maybe an MB&F, and then you have like 6 or 7 of them, and then they form like a troop. So they have to have like a watch version, and then of course a robot version. This could be a whole comic book. Come on, fan fiction. There's no watch fan fiction. There needs to be. There's fan homage, but there's no fan fiction.
This whole thing feels like we're past it already. Like it feels like it had happened somehow. Right now,
Transformers are forever. Come on, you know that.
Yeah, that's true. All right, which watch brand should do that? I'm going with Timex.
And then we like what the Patek Philippe character would have daddy issues because he's never owned by something. You know, there's a lot of ways you could go with this.
You're right. You can get really weird with the characters. Someone's going to be the artist, and then someone needs to be the writer. There needs to be a duo. So somewhere out there, I want a troupe of wristwatch transformers. And the reason they need to have a transformer is that if you have talking wristwatches, that's dumb. They still have to have their essential wristwatch design, but then they have to have a robot mode where they have a personality. I think Submariner is going to be a jerk. Dependable, but definitely a jerk.
I think it's more of a passive character, the Submariner. It doesn't come across to me as an active thingy at all.
Really?
The
Not a little
Submariner's
bit
unaware
overconfident?
that it's a
Passive and boring.
Submariner.
Oh,
Just like
so
most
boring.
Submariner owners, they don't know they have a sub. You mean my Rolex? It's like the Submariner is just unaware that it's a dive watch.
I call it the Rolex.
The citizen
So
just got jealous. It's like,
superficial.
what about me?
I'm the. Oh, jeez.
By the way, I have a feeling we have not only not heard of the last of The Citizen, but we're about to hear a lot more of The Citizen.
Oh, yeah, that's true. The
I'm
Citizen.
excited about more of this.
It's hard to laugh about it other than using the. That's true. Do we need? Does
Look
the
what I
world
got in the
need-
mail.
Oh, does that have a dancing tourbillon?
It is a dancing minute hand, essentially. So
How
this
do
is
we
the new
feel
Freak
about-
X.
Can we still call it a freak if it has a crown?
No.
I guess.
I mean, that was like one of their defining things. There's no crown, no dial. Like, but well, now there's a crown.
Yeah, I don't mind the crown too much. What makes it a freak to me is the minute hand with the balance wheel at the end. That's what makes it a freak for me. But I see what you're saying. I can also go with that. New movement, new-ish bracelet, and new price. $42,400. Jeez.
In steel?
That's a lot.
And is it $10,000 less on the strap?
Probably not. I was just shocked at the price because this used to be like a low 20 grand watch.
You know that 40 grand's the new 20 grand.
Great.
That does seem very expensive. What's the
Yes.
retail for like the full-on flagship Freak S? Like-
So that's like hundreds of like well over 100,000. But they used to have some others. So on a strap, on a leather strap, it's 41,200, and on a bracelet it's 42,400. So it's only $1,000. It's $1,200 for the bracelet, which really isn't much.
I understand why they want to make the Freak like a whole big family, but I kind of get less excited as it gets less freaky. Like, unless it's full on Freak, I'm like, there's just so much other stuff on the market to buy.
So what he's saying is that Ulysse Nardin provided this little comparison between the Freak X first generation, which I was referring to as a low $20,000 watch, and then this one for 40 grand. And they're saying finishing, and you have this little table or chart that compares the two. And the Freak X first generation finishing without decorative finishing on a 20 grand watch. This one has high-end decoration. And I'm like, as much as I absolutely love Ulysse Nardin for all kinds of reasons, and the Freak X is of course one of them, it's just bold to say that your previous version had no decorative finishing, right?
We're supposed to promote transparency.
Yeah,
And
but
they're-
it's not like it was not finished. It totally was finished. It's not like
It was nice, but I mean, look, this is the problem. We need to let them be comfortable dismissing their older watches. Like, the brands are so afraid of talking negatively about their old products. And I think that's bad. So it's like we need to encourage them being like, we made an improvement. Because they try to pretend like every watch they've ever made has been perfect.
No, I fully agree. I'm just saying it's bold to say that it was without decorative finishing, which is impossible on a 20-gram watch.
So you're saying they need to have like an American spin on it, like they're being too open.
It was the best, and now it's better than best. It's the ultimate, and then it's going to be the Ultra, and then the Max, and then the whatever.
Like they could say now with a lot more finishing, and that would still be correct.
Yeah, exactly. For the whole family. Diameter is down, thickness is down ever so slightly, lug to lug is down considerably.
I'm looking at a completely different watch. We're like, that doesn't look like a Casio Freak.
And yet it looks exactly the same freaking watch. All right. It's not titanium, it's 80% recycled steel.
Isn't all steel recycled? What's the 20% that's not recycled? What does that mean?
It's ore.
Oh, yeah, I'm worried about that.
So is it that all the steel's made out of the same steel, or did they use recycled steel for 80% of it, and then some of it was made from new virgin steel, whatever the correct vernacular is for?
No, what makes it really expensive is that they had to melt down previously with Nardin watch. That's why it went to 20 grand to 40 grand. Because we just had to use 80% old UN watches.
I want there to be like an 80% with like an asterisk, and then I want to have like a long, complicated explanation. No, but it really begs the question.
Does it come from washing machines or Ulysse Nardin watches? Which
I
one is
don't even know what virgin steel is because it's an alloy, so it doesn't really make sense, right? So if it's not recycled, what is it? I'm less impressed by the 80%, more curious by that 20%. What is that? Is it from space? What does that mean?
We need to get you up to speed on metallurgy.
Do they have like Swiss people with pans in a river? We got some new ore. Like, what is it? What are they trying to say?
That's probably what it is. That's fine.
That's how you get the extra 20,000.
You know, of all the savoir-faire images we see all the time, you know, the watchmaking, the painting, I would like to see a watchmaker crouched over by a river, you know, like gold panning.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be fun.
They have the mountains, they have the rivers in Switzerland. Why are they not, you know, ore hunting?
Or hunting. It has noise reduction as opposed to standard construction. So which I appreciate. I like a quiet watch. I don't like to hear, you know, these super loud TikToks or whatever, or whirring of
I might also put an old
rotor.
Freak on the website. I don't think we have coverage of this one. We'll put one of the old ones on there.
Yeah, please do.
I love Ulysse Nardin, but I can't name a Freak X that I like really well.
I like the Ops. The Ops is good. That green,
yes, that's the good
that
one.
One's great.
Exactly.
That's the good one.
Yeah, the one that was really cool. But you're right. They were not that easy to find a good one because of the design. Somehow it was always too monochromatic somehow, or even like a big block of grayness or black or whatever. And it's just
look at that high-end finishing on the movement. Mm-hmm. Does this look like what is the new decorative finishing or whatever they speak of? This looks pretty solid.
It's pretty solid. This one has, thankfully, I have an excellent near sight vision, and I'm blind for far. This is some beautiful anglage on the minute hand. So it's you know, it's properly curved. It's not this machine wong, and then that's about it. But it's proper high end polishing and beveling. So that's nice.
Is the reverse side any better?
Yeah, it looks very different. Yeah, it's beautiful.
Okay, so we'll have this review on the website, and then everyone will get to make up their mind about the Freak X. I love the Freaks, and I'm not saying that like you're wrong for liking a Freak X. I'm simply saying I don't personally get it. It just feels like they're like stripping down. They're like, here's what we love about the Freak. What can we snip and take away?
Kind of. I think what happened is sort of similar to that. The way I would phrase it was that I think they just wanted to avoid cannibalizing the more expensive Freak models with the Freak 1 and all the rest of them, which were like 50, 60 grand. And somehow
why
this
not
was
call
never
it Diet Freak or Freak Light?
Diet Freak.
Yeah.
That would have been a
Diet
really good
Freak.
name, Diet Freak. I love that. That's super freaking. Yeah, that's a really good name. But I never get this because it's so expensive at $20,000, $25,000, $30,000. I don't think it's supposed to be a compromise thing at all. You know, there's no, punches to be pulled at all. And then if somebody wants to blow 60 grand on a watch, they are going to do that just because they can. It's not like, I will just buy the 30 grand because, no, if they have 60 grand to go blow on a UN, they would absolutely do it.
Okay, well, we'll look forward to that. Let's talk about this just really quick. This Casio watch that just went up. Now this is the negative color, the black colored MIPS screen, the MIP screen, memory and pixel screen from Casio G-Shock that is now on not all, but some of the new watches. This is the GMW BZ 5000 RC-1, which has some fun colors on it, but I have a different version of this watch with the normal LCD MIP screen. It's got the light background. I'm not super in love with it. Here's what's really weird. And again,
that's cool.
Maybe I'm really dumb here, but why can't the same screen be both black background, or light version? Like LCD, I totally get it. But for this, why do they sell one or the other? Is it the same screen able to do both?
I'm not sure.
It is, because there's you can swap between positive and negative on certain things that have this type of screen, smartwatches, and I think maybe one of the new Citizen lets you choose it.
But my understanding is that you have to choose.
Yeah, did they change something on the design? Maybe, the size of the different fonts and displays and whatever is different for legibility purposes or something?
Okay, well, get this. That's funny you mentioned that with the font. Okay, so this on the screen right here is their new font. And it's called the new font. Well, I don't know what they call it, but it's the new one because it's just smooth numerals. There isn't like, the stencil style sections. But in order to make it so that you can still have that look, you can switch the font only to that other one. But this is where I laugh. You can't do it on the watch.
So Casio.
If you don't have the app, you can't do it. The watch itself doesn't allow it.
Yeah, that's funny. Why is it a Sunday in 2026? I just find that hysterical. It's a Sunday in 2026. It's just like, in terms of organization of this place, 2026, it's a Sunday. Good luck.
That's right. And then 6:28 after that, my son still looks at the date and thinks it's the time. He's like, the time's wrong. That's not the time.
Yeah. It's not the best display at all. I mean, if they have created something new, the way that they have allocated the different spaces and all the rest of it, it's just, I don't want it because it just doesn't look right to me.
I adore all the numbers on the back of the Casio G-Shock watches.
That's not enough text. Not even
I'm
close.
not actually laughing. I love it. I love all the explanation. I love all the things it says, the certifications, the tech things.
Nothing is explained.
I adore it.
It says R-RCAIS63W.
These look
nonsense.
like Elon Musk's kids' names, just numbers, letters, and symbols. None of this is... The only thing that I can tell is the thing in the box is the module number, which you can use to find user manuals. Multi-band 6 totally makes sense. Tough solar, yep. Stainless steel, got you. Water resistant 20 bar, and that is it. Everything else, I don't even know what's that thing above the CE. Like looks like alien runes. Not the Bluetooth
UK
symbol.
That's the UK one because they're not part of the European Union anymore.
I'm looking at it sideways. Okay, I got it.
Yeah, UK consumer or something. I don't know, advocacy or something.
UK, California.
And it says barbecue.
When's the last time someone bought a watch like this, and the most important thing to them was the fact that the watch was shock resistant?
I love it. It's so cool. Shock resistant Bluetooth.
They're so proud of it, as though like it's I don't know that they've updated shock resistance. Yeah, like it's been 4 decades since it's become like that's what they get. But that's what they're so like. Don't let anyone forget that it's also shock resistant. And also they had to choose like a slightly decorative font, right? They're like, ooh, let's get some personality, little italics Japanese going on.
Love
Everything else, no nonsense. Of course, the Casio logo is the Casio logo, but shock resistance got to have a little flair.
It's like the 911. It's like Porsche. Like, have you mentioned the engine is in the back? It's just like everybody knows it's there. Everyone knows this freaking watch is shock resistant, but it's right in there in your face. I love
if you've missed it on the front, we've put it on the back for good measure because we also have it in caps lock on the front, right on their bezel.
Yeah.
It's Casio is the only company I think has ever made me want more hidden rainbow in my wristwatch.
So cool. I love this. This is one of the best case profiles I've seen in a long time. That's unbelievable.
This is what they added that's new. This case back is new for the MIPS screen version of the of this collection. So
if I designed that case profile, I'd be like, my work here is done for the next 10 years. And if I designed that display, I would be like, okay, we have to start all over from scratch. What is this terrible nonsense?
It's fun. I'm waiting for there to be a little bit more flair with the screen. So I think these are good watches. If you have the previous generation, I don't think that there's a massive reason to upgrade. It is a cool watch. If you want, like, I don't want to call it dressy, but like a fancier Casio that's not MRG priced, but it has like a nice polished bracelet. Like, this is versatile as hell. But once you start wearing the titanium ones of these, the steel ones feel really heavy, right?
Yeah. That's true.
I think these might be kind of some of the best bang for your buck. Like, Casio does make much nicer G-Shocks, but after this, what you're getting for your money really just comes down to more premium materials and some slightly nicer features. This gives you the Bluetooth, the solar, all the modes, improved screen. It's fully metal, so full metal, not just a metal bezel. Now, it's not that like Cobarion and titanium multi-component bezel hand finished or like samurai hammered or whatever like they do on some of the MRG stuff, but this is like mid 3-figure price point. And so if you're curious about nicer Gs but didn't want to go into the MTG MRG realm, I think this is like great value for the money. And I've got one of the older generation of them. Love it. Absolutely love it.
I cannot wait till they actually decide to make use of the technology available on the screen, right? They're not limited to the positions of things that they are in an LCD. And I really think that because ostensibly the software can do it, they can change everything. They can change the layout. They can put animations, well, sort of animations on there. But it doesn't refresh that often, so they can't really make it look fast. But don't you agree that Casio kind of now owes it to the community to just take this really great case and bracelet, but the screen looks like the most basic kind of design from like a basic consumer piece of little
100%.
electronics. There's all these devices now with little screens. It's like, just looks like they pulled it off of that.
Yeah, complete absence of creativity or even a desire to give, like some sort of a positive experience. It's useless. And what's really painful here is that if you look at the shock resistant font on the case back, that has more flair and more creativity in it than the entire display that you're looking at all times. Whoever designed that font or even that entire case back has to design the display. I mean, I could do with a little bit less text on the display, but still, come on.
All right. We'll talk more about the GMW BZ. The Z is for the new screen 5000 in the future again.
Movado introduces the Heritage Kingmatic, a sleek timepiece that brings back the golden age of 20th century mechanical wristwatches when design and distinction were everything. The original Kingmatic was debuted in 1952 as a self-winding dress watch that remained in the Movado catalog for nearly 3 decades. The modern Heritage Kingmatic is directly inspired by a cushion-shaped Kingmatic design from 1962. Movado offers multiple cosmetic styles of the Heritage Kingmatic, each with a 35mm wide steel case, legible dial with beautiful Dauphine-style hands, and a Swiss-made automatic movement assembled at the company's manufacture in La Chaux-de-Fonds. Movado invites you to discover the Heritage Timepiece collection today as the company celebrates both the 70th anniversary of the original Kingmatic as well as the 145th anniversary of the historic Movado brand. Discover your next timepiece at Movado.com.
Let's see. What else do we want to talk about here? Oh, Ripley. Your
Vostok Europe.
favorite. We had a long discussion about this in Vegas.
How was it?
remember. Vegas?
No, Vostok Europe. Like this
Well,
watch.
we saw them in Vegas.
Awesome.
Oh, cool.
Like, you can't not go check out a bunch of their watches. And
They had a
not
great booth. Didn't they have a great booth?
Great booth. And they had this big screen where they could show clips of like what their ambassadors all do pretty cool stuff. Pilots, they cave diving, all of this stuff. So that, you know, they don't just beat their chest and like have this aspirational vibe. They actually like send their watches to places but I mean, each one of them, it also helps explain why some of them look the way they do, whether it's for visual or functional purposes. It all kind of tethers to the world or the theme of the watch, and such a fun company. Big, bold, has a definitive identity. There's nothing derivative about some of these. And I had a ton of fun wearing this. I wore this in Vegas and had a great time. Good Vegas watch, 100% good Vegas watch.
So this is the Vostok Europe Expedition South Pole. Vegas is pretty far from the South Pole. What about this watch helps people to engage in expeditions in the South Pole?
So they have the North Pole and the South Pole series, and each one you can have either like three-hand or chronograph models. This is the smallest and most simple one. It's in the South Pole realm. And so it's a time and date mechanical watch, Seiko movement. Big, bold, bright colors so you can see it. You know, that's a good feature to have. It's very, you know, it looks like a field watch, but it's quite a bit more burly and water resistant. If you scroll down and look at the side profile on the case, it'll make sense why it's got 200 meters of water resistance. Screw down crown, screw down case back. And an interesting thing about Vostok Europe is that they specifically use K1 crystals on all of their sport and tool watches. They do use sapphire on a few models, but they're more of like a dressy, elevated thing. And they do this specifically because they're okay with things getting scratched, but they don't want things to shatter completely. And in cave diving or rigorous use, they're willing to accept the fact that sapphire is going to be more scratch resistant, but less likely to shatter or come apart completely. So I guess sapphire is a crystal. K1 is a glass. So it's not a crystalline structure. It's more of an amorphous structure. So you're more likely to get dents, chips, chunks taken out of it, but it's not going to shatter in the same way that sapphire does when it gets completely compromised. Beyond that, this isn't a feature-packed watch. So some of their watches have a separate 24-hour scale that shows how much daylight you're going to have at the North Pole. This is none of that. It's just super simple. It's just an uber overbuilt field watch with some fun, vibrant colors.
What's up with the sweat channel in the middle of the strap?
Well, one strap wasn't enough, so they put two together. It's just double reinforced. So if you actually look at the strap, it's like they have one strap, and then over either side of the strap, there's these double layered strips, and they're functional too. This is a double tang buckle, so the two tangs go through these double reinforced straps. So instead of going through that groove where it's at its thinnest, the prongs go through this double layer of strap to make it even less likely to come off the wrist if it gets caught on things. There is there you
that's
go.
Cool.
Yeah, so burly strap. But this is, it's 22 millimeter lugs. It's a field watch. Put it on a NATO, put it on rubber, put it on whatever you want. They also sell it on a bright orange rubber strap, which it looks pretty sweet on this one with the orange hand. So, and then, certain things are functional, certain things are purely decorative. So if you look on the sides of the bezel, like the fixed bezel, there's directional markings. No purpose at all other than to help connect it to its world a bit more. But if you didn't have stuff on that space, it would seem kind of lonely. So I kind of like it. I'm not usually one for superfluous details, but that's kind of a fun one that sort of helps add a design characteristic without feeling too contrived.
My understanding is that this is amongst the smallest, if not the smallest watch sold by Vostok Europe right now?
It is not the smallest, but it is among the smallest.
And how big is it? And what movement is it? And what does it cost?
So at $384, it is, I think, 43 millimeters. Don't ask me how thick it is. It's probably thicker than the last cheeseburger I ate. It is a chunk, but it does wear quite well. The one thing about Vostok Europe is they're like wild on paper dimensions, but they can make a big watch wear pretty comfortably. Wore it around in Vegas the week. Had a good time with it. It was surprisingly comfortable. I've got little wrists. And it has a Seiko NH35. So
that's practically a marathon-sized bezel there.
I know. Look at that. And it doesn't turn or anything. That's just fixed. That is just a big facade letting you know I'm designed for outdoors stuff.
Where East is.
And see how the crown is, there's a black cap on it. It's ceramic. I can only imagine that's to help prevent wear at a high wear area. Kind of a cool touch. But as you can tell, there's not much case back. It's just this big flat screw down thing. So it hugs the wrist quite well. Lugs curve downward. And then you're just rocking this big green, giant, super capable field watch.
Which is the funner pole to expedite to? The north or the south one? I really don't know.
Well, I mean, probably the South Pole, right? That's where like the aliens and all the government bases are, right? That's
is that where the South Pole is supposed to be?
Oh, yeah. Antarctica, if you want to go down that rabbit hole of the conspiracy theory.
Is that where the penguins are? They're in the South, right?
They're all over the place. They're just birds.
Like they're only in one. They're like in the South, but not the North, I think.
There was Santa Claus, right? That's North?
Penguins.
Yeah, the birds.
Yeah. I know that. Okay. I know there's some off the South Americas. There's got to be some penguins down there.
Okay. Well, yeah, they're probably down there. I wouldn't be surprised.
Polar bears, I know, are in the North Pole. That's where the polar bears are.
Well, there could be all sorts of life and land under the ice. This one, there is a continent under there. People think there was civilization. We don't really know. But if you wanted to go explore it, Vostok Europe makes the perfect watch for it. And it's not just a watch, it's a whole collection.
Pretty decent price.
Yeah, really good price. That's the thing. They're big personality, fun watch, but also at less than $400. It's well made, it's distinct, and that's more than you can say for a lot of other things at $400.
Let's move on to another watch with a green dial, though completely different. But a fun thing, this is the Chronoswiss Lunar Chronograph. Is this called the Aurora? Is that what the specific dial color is, David? Tell us more about this watch. Yeah, it is,
because it switches or changes colors. It's, whichever way you look at it. Most of the time it looks green, but when you look at it at a very steep angle, it turns into purple. So that's quite cool. It's a PVD coating over this very elaborate dial. I wanted to get one of these in for review just because, it's been a good number of years since I last had a Chronoswiss in, and my last impression of the brand was just this overarching sense of quality everywhere you look and everything you touch. And that's just rare, to have one of these like really small brands go out of their way to attain and maintain, this aura of quality. It's sort of an old school watch to me. This could have debuted in, look at this watch. This is the last one that I had in. That was unbelievable. That was in 2020. Wow. I mean, that watch looked and wore as though it was from, like 5x the price that it was. It must have been like around 10, 11 grand, but it looked like a 50 grand watch right there. So that's really nice. And this one is also very nice. But again, of course, you have to pay the price because it's like, if I recall correctly, it's like $10,000, $11,000. This one for this Aurora version as well, which is, quite a lot for a watch on a strap. But overall, you are getting a luxury watch that is made to a standard as I believe it should be, at this price point.
I always love when I talk to a brand like Chronoswiss and I ask them, where did you get a Valjo 7751, made by ETA? And they always like have this funny look. They're like, oh, we found some. Like the answer is never we bought them from ETA. I don't know if they still have some. I have a couple watches of this movement. It's an interesting movement. It's good bang for your buck because it just does a bunch of stuff. But it's always funny that there's some type of background hustle. I don't really know how else to explain it. Just to source a movement like this. Yeah, it's some hidden stashes, of Hayek Senior. He must have hit a bunch of these somewhere in Switzerland. It's a cam actuated chronograph, but it does have the central date with a pointer date, so that's quite neat.
And yeah, overall, it's just a great wearing experience. I really like this micro adjust on a strap. If you scroll up a little bit, so this way you can adjust by an entire, whole length or width on the bracelet without having to remove it and mess up, the rest of the settings on the strap. So that's quite nice. This should be standard on every watch over $5,000.
Is it like the thing Formex does, where if you press one of the two buttons on the release, you can slide it? And
it's the same part made by Dexel. Yes.
Okay.
I was
great extension system. Really, really clever.
Look at that lug. Just scroll up a little bit. Look at that. That's unbelievable. So that's you can clearly make out the Nikon text on top of my camera, my fingers, and on the side you have this actual screw head, which is domed and highly polished, and you can see the text, which is a handwritten text on a page next to it. It's unfreaking believable to bring a surface to this level. And sure, you're looking at a watch on a strap, not on a fancier bracelet, but the overall quality, this is what I'm talking about, lives in these smaller details, which just really gets me, just makes me happy and gets me excited.
I think it's important to point out that when I think it was Kurt Klaus, right, that kind of started all this with Chronoswiss, he took what was essentially like a vintage aviator style case. That's where you get the coined kind of bezel, that kind of crown. So like a vintage aviator chronograph. And then he put, I don't know, what was the innovation? Was it kind of the Guilloche style dial? The kind of Breguet style numerals and hands and things like that? He kind of just patched together something. I think this was in the 1990s. And yes, it's sort of a fashion thing, but it worked out really well. Like, I like this combo. It's a total Frankenstein thing if you really look at the history of stuff, but it works well, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's not supposed to work, and yet it totally does, with the onion crown, with the coin edge bezel and case back, which are, exactly the same design and execution.
It'd be like a pickup truck wearing a bow tie. Like, it's not supposed to make sense, but it kind of does.
Yeah. Yeah.
And just like a pickup truck, it works in a lot of different aesthetics. Like, some of these are really classical and traditional, and they look great, as you'd expect, kind of given the design cues. Other go a lot more modern and architectural as far as open work dials, like the one David had in the previous photo. And then there's some that just go bonkers colors. Like, these guys do crazy stuff. It's inspired by a snake. It's inspired by a rave like background, like crazy stuff. And it works in all of these. So despite being kind of an interesting mashup of things, it's also proven to be incredibly versatile in terms of aesthetics and color palettes. Some of my favorite ones are those bonker multicolored ones where, it has some name and it's all of that and then some. It's every color under the rainbow, and it's a showcase of like PVD or something like that. So it's surprisingly versatile, but always seems to look pretty good, even if it's not your personal preference or your cup of tea. It's a well executed kind of template that can take on a lot of different personalities.
Like, it is easy to complain about the price and maybe the colors aren't for you, but when it comes down to it, like, it is oddly versatile. It looks like complicated enough where you're like, I feel like I'm wearing I want to wear a complicated watch today. It's like, it's got all that. Look, the 7751 is not, it's a fine movement. It's got the reliability of the 7750. I guess the only thing is that it's a complete calendar as opposed to an annual calendar, which means that even though it has, some of the indicators on there, you have to change certain elements. So this version of it doesn't have everything in there. This is not, this isn't all the different little indicators that have. There's the certain parts of the calendar that are removed. But you still have the date. So I guess they just pulled it back because the more complete calendar that it's capable of having, makes it a little bit annoying. So I think what they did is they just said, well, let's just leave the pointer date, which I think actually makes sense.
What's the subdial at 6 o'clock? They got moon phase at 3. Counter.
It's a 12-hour totalizer for the chronograph.
Oh, yeah. Nice. Okay, so then, this isn't overly feature-packed and tedious to set or anything. This is kind of gives you lots of visual intrigue without, needing a watch butler.
Look, it's been a long time. Like, look, this is where was it that I talked about the 7751? Here's this one has it. Oh, here we go. So this is you did this, Ripley. This is another watch.
Brellum.
Yeah. So you see here how in the top subdial there's the day of the week and the month, and then in the running seconds there's what's supposed to be a synchronized 24-hour. Actually, I think maybe is that the moon? No, that's not the moon.
No, that's the chronograph counter as well.
There's like a synchronized 24-hour. I think it's an AM PM hand, but there's a few more pieces of functionality that is possible there. So I guess
what a computer.
Yeah. So how they moved the moon phase, they moved a few things over. Chronoswiss did that, but that's the base layout of the 7751. That's the movement they started with.
There's a bazillion of these. There's so many different versions. It's unbelievable. From the late 90s or mid 90s when the watch industry was back in full swing, people they just love this. This is a quintessentially expensive looking dial layout and watch layout for essentially 2 decades.
Why does not ETA reverse course and take some of these movements that people have liked and just change them around a little bit? Like turn this into a proper annual calendar. Do things with the 7750 base, bring some of that back, maybe even try a little bit for their own in-house brands, Longines and Hamilton and stuff like that. But I feel that ETA just stopped. I'm not saying they stopped development. They certainly haven't, but it doesn't seem to make sense. They don't seem to be making what you'd think they'd make. They don't really revisit their old stuff. And a lot of the movements that we just saw used over and over again, you just don't hear about them anymore.
Because they are busy suing Samsung. That's what they are occupying themselves. They're
not likely to win very much.
When was the last time Swatch Group came out with... I guess they have updated the power reserve here and there, and they've done some cool stuff. But it's just like compared to the size of that corporation and the brands it involves, and not to mention ETA, for example, and its suppliers. I think I agree. There's so much room for improvement, for product development. We're just missing this fire. I mean, whoever developed this 7751, let's be generous, they are, retired already. And they have been for quite some time. So, I think, it's just, we need some more fire, more freedom, more investment. And then the Swatch Group can be an exciting place again.
Fire, huh?
Yep.
Ripley, do you want to talk about this Arken Alterum? Is that how it's pronounced?
Yeah, these are cool. I like these.
It's like a very green month. Look at all these green watches in a row here.
I know. I just reviewed another green GMT from Timex too, so you'll see that one.
Are you choosing these to be green, or is that the color that they're coming in? That's what you got.
Well, the Arken was only available in green. When it first launched a couple years ago, it was offered in black and gray. Since then, they did a couple of they did speakeasy editions, which never appeared on their website. You could only buy them like in person at certain events. They did the Year of the Dragon one, which I haven't reviewed, which was done as a 60-piece limited edition. So this is the first core collection real update to occur since the first batch.
Same style?
Almost. So there's been some updates. Same case, still titanium with all brushed with a hardened scratch resistant finish. Still the same movement, which is a bespoke version of the 9015 Miyota with a custom module that gives it 2 12-hour time zones and corresponding day and night indicators. That extra buttons for correcting the date, which is now on a subdial at 6 instead of a window. So the big updates to accompany this one, aside from a colorway, which is kind of a very greenish gray color, is the first one is that the hour markers, previously they were 3D printed so solid blocks of loom, but 3D printed. Now they're molded, so the shape's a bit more defined. It just looks a little bit nicer. Still blue glowing, very good, because the whole applied marker is just a big chunk of loom, basically Lumicast, if anyone's familiar with that. The update, another one for the attachment system to how the strap clips onto the integrated lugs. It's a quick release system. They also sell rubber straps if you want them, but the tab has been it's beefier, more rounded corners, and easier to grip, so little refinement there. And then my favorite one is, because this was a 9015 to start, the original models had a ghost position on the crown. So totally innocuous, but when you pulled out the crown, there was a vestigial setting position, and then you have to pull it out to the second notch. A lot of watches that are time-only watches that are using a date displaying caliber have that. It's not unique to this. And it was kind of just a result of the fact that this was a totally bespoke movement that they were using, this module. For these and the speakeasy ones, they've remedied that, so the movement operates as it should, just a single crown position, date corrector at that. But they're really cool. What the thing I like about it is it gives you two time zones in a 12-hour format. It's not as intuitive as a normal GMT, just the setting process. You have to wind all the hands forward. Then when you wind them back, the secondary hour hand stays. But what's cool about it is it offers a unique experience than what you get from like basically any other watch, let alone one that's like 600 and something pounds, maybe about $800.
Does it make a good travel watch?
Travel, not as good as like a flyer GMT where you're changing time zones. If you need to keep track of two time zones and that's the main purpose, yeah, absolutely. And the fact that it has a separate pusher for the date's nice, because when you reset it, if the date's off, it's easy to correct. If you're more of the type who needs the two time zones, but isn't like, oh, I'm going to need to jump at 3 hours while I'm at a layover and then another 4 hours for this, and you don't really need that jumpable hour hand functionality, this is a great way where there's no bezel to futz with, two 12-hour hands, so it's simple to read. There's no kind of mental math if you're like us in the States and don't use a 24-hour time clock. And it looks very distinct. It doesn't look like a normal GMT.
It definitely has a distinctive look. David, what's the David verdict?
I quite like it. I wish we could see more of these watches where almost everything is unique. Handset, the shape of the hour markers, the case, the login is, it's just the whole thing looks unique yet rounded to my eyes. I think that's a rare package. That's super cool. It reminds me of the Bulgari Diagono a little bit, which I love dearly. So that's quite cool.
Let's change tack again here. David, you wrote about more on Lorige, and this is a company that, just to remind everyone, I don't know if it's for all their watches, but they take these carbon brake pads and then they process them, and that becomes a watch case. You did a new article that's called Behind the Brand, How Lorige Engineered Its Unique Connection with Top-Tier Motorsport.
Yep.
What do you describe in this article?
Well, this is basically an interview with one of the founders, and where this whole approach, this passion, this drive, and this engineering is coming from. Because it's completely different to take a watch and then put whatever it is that a collaboration is on the case back, and then just go with it. This is a brand that was set up by people who actually worked and have experience in motorsports and racing and all the rest of it. So this is more of a passion project, which I really like. This is why it has something tangible from that world, and this is why it's been so successful among drivers, team owners, all the rest of it. And I think that's exactly how a company or a brand like this should be built. You build it from, like this grassroots kind of thing where, you just have to make sure that the paddock wears this. And then it will find its way to others. Apparently, and I could be, this could change over time, but hopefully it will remain like this. They are not rushing with the growth. And that's very important. If you're trying to build something like this and you have investor pressure, and you're just churning out watches, or a few too many of them, then that's a disaster. Here, what I see is that they're consistently selling out of these 10, 20, 30 piece limited editions, and that's as it should be. People should be looking forward to wearing a piece of racing heritage and history, and apparently it resonates with the right audience in the world of racing, which is what people care about if you care about racing. So that's cool.
Is there a potential limit on the number of race world watches? I mean, for the longest time, before sort of the recent craze and maybe Formula One and some stuff, there's always been a lot of car racing world watches or car watches or things like that. But it feels like it's hit a new level. There's also the big sponsorships. And I wonder if it's hitting a saturation point or if there's still a lot of enthusiasm left. And I think one important thing to say is a lot of watch brands are going to these events no longer as sort of a customer appreciation or VIP experience, but to find customers at the races, at the car shows, whatever. So it's a very ripe area right now. I just wonder how big the market can be to support the fascinating but ultimately expensive, interesting collaborations that brands like Lorige do with the actual cars and their parts. You know what I mean?
Yeah, my impression is that this goes in tandem with the remarkable growth in the popularity of motorsport in the recent years. You know, endurance racing is huge now in Europe and also stateside. So that's one of the things where Formula One exploded over the last 5 years or 7 years. You know, not even that, 5 years. So the popularity of motorsports has grown massively over the last few years through social media and through even better broadcasts and all the rest of it. So it's very, very exciting races and racing all across the globe, really. So if you're a motorsport fan, this is a really good time to witness the growth of these racing series. And I believe that is why we are looking at hundreds of thousands of more potential customers who might want to express their love and passion for racing through the watch that they are wearing.
When you hang out with Lorige, and I know you did some fun stuff with them, what do you feel is the right connection visually? Materials is one thing, but like visually, when you look at the watches, what do you want to be reminded about? Is it something about the race day experience, the track, the car, the people, the outfits? I'm just wondering, you've been to a lot of these things. How do you want to be reminded by your automotive love when you look at a watch on your wrist?
I like small tributes where it's certain little elements replicate the shape or the design of something on a car. Let it be a wheel, a brake caliper, a wing, or whatever it may be, or something on the dashboard. Like the numerals, I think should match. So the fonts, it's stuff like this. It's little details. I don't want to wear a huge. There used to be like some of these like Tissot and stuff that actually look like brake discs. They with the little holes and everything. So that
used to be. They still make them.
Yeah, but probably they do. Yeah, for the MotoGP, I think it was, right, or something like that.
Yeah.
For for bikes.
You're right. It's supposed to be a motorcycle brake, but yeah, it looks like every other brake.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, stuff like that, without being too cheesy or too on the nose. So it's still a watch. It has to function in terms of legibility and wearability first and foremost as a timepiece, and then as a tribute piece second.
Is there life beyond Richard Mille when it comes to super high end? Because I've noticed a lot of high end automotive watches, not all of them, but a lot of them try to incorporate something about Richard Mille DNA as though it's like a must. It's like they tried not to. And they're like, oh, we can't. We got to go back to the barrel-shaped case because everything else we've tried, nobody wants. And when Richard Mille came out with a barrel-shaped case originally, they borrowed that from Frank Muller that did it very successfully, who themselves were very innovative because no one cared about that case design in 80 years or something like that.
Yes.
It was like back in the really early Patek Philippe and Art Deco days. So I'm wondering, what does a brand need to do to break out of this mold, or is it fine? It's funny because that shape, that doesn't look like anything on a car. Not that I know of.
No, maybe a top-down view or something like that. But you have to squint really hard for that to apply. I think it's great that you mentioned it because I was going to bring up Richard Mille as well. I think they own the genre at this point. If you want to create a sports car, you're going to make a mid-engine layout or whatever it may be, or maybe a sports coupe with a front engine. But usually, these are the definitions or the boundaries of the genre at this point. If you're making a motorsports watch, it's going to look like this. I agree that there should be something else, but somehow this shape is what stands out, that goes with the territory a little bit, and that it does not look old or antiquated or whatever. And I'm happy you mentioned Frank Muller because it's always funny when people, stand up and say, they're knocking off Richard Mille, who themselves took it from somebody else. So it's always so funny when people think that something came from somewhere and it turns out that no, actually they took it from somebody else, but you just don't happen to know that. So it's like, again, I keep going back to the sports coupes. It's not like the first company who ever made a sports coupe is only allowed to make a coupe these days.
But we know the rule. Category. People only remember their original copier, right? They're not even clear where they got copied from, but it's the first copier they can remember. That's the originator.
Yes. That's hysterical.
We have time for one more watch. This is something I reviewed. I guess it's pronounced HAIYI. I'm not really sure exactly how to say that. I think that's like what is it? Chinese for ocean, maybe? That's what I remember reading. This is the Peacock HAIYI Tourbillon Diver. It is from Chinese Peacock Watch. It's a specialist in tourbillons. It's a manually wound tourbillon. This is a newer generation of movements that just came out a few months ago. I reviewed another watch called the Divine Craft, which had a slightly different version of this movement, but it's essentially identical. This is a well-sized dive watch. It's about 4.5 millimeters more narrow than the last tourbillon diver that Peacock came out with. So this is about 40 millimeters wide, not terribly thick, new generation tourbillon movement. Sapphire hands, sapphire bezel, dial that is actually made through machine engraving. It's not quite a rose engine, but it's something they call a Lindsay machine that's then colored. There's blue and green and I think a purple dial version. Tiny, tiny diamonds at the headstone there in the tourbillon, just for fun, to be a little Lange-esque. Lange would actually put that in a slightly different position there, but they just decided to put a little diamond there. I like this watch. It's not perfect by any means, but it is also really fun and has a lot of high-end features. And again, in terms of Chinese tourbillon movements, that looks a lot better than maybe you might have remembered from just a few years ago, right?
Absolutely. So, and I think this is a fun design too. It's not trying to take itself too seriously, despite being a tourbillon.
The price on this watch is $3,499. And that's what I think is interesting. And let me explain a little bit. A couple of years ago, a Chinese tourbillon was trying to be as cheap as can be. And then some of them experiment by buying like really expensive. And I guess there's only so many $80,000 Chinese tourbillons that people want. Some, sure, but not a lot. So it's like they're trying to find their sweet spot. They're trying to find, like, what should our price be? How much effort, and decoration should we put into it? Because it used to be like, just like bottom of the barrel, like as cheap as possible to be called the tourbillon. Then they started adding
dirty
things.
movements. Yeah.
Yeah, and now it's like these are decent. I haven't had any Chinese tourbillons break on me, though. Admittedly, I haven't like pushed them to the limit. But I guess the question is this $3,500 range, is this good? Could they go up higher? The Divine Craft, I think, was around the same price. What do you think is that sort of range that people are willing to spend on a Chinese tourbillon?
This seems like the perfect price point. I think it's bang on, because this should allow them to make it nice. I don't want something for $800 or $1,200 that's has a cool function, but everything else about it is beat up or run down or just not to a level of quality that I would want. And I want a nice case, I want nice hands, I want a nice dial, and I want a clean looking movement that works well. And if $3,500 allows them to do that, then let it be $3,500 and not $800. Look at that. That's one impressive looking movement. Wow.
That's actually the same movement, just a slightly different version of it. So on this slightly sportier version, they have a more kind of solid.
It's not even close. Wow. I mean, look at the internal angles and all the rest of it. How much is the Divine Craft? How much is this?
Let's find out. I forgot. I think it's around the same amount.
This looks. I'd be surprised. That would be impressive.
Oh, it's more, yeah.
Yeah, 4,900. Yeah, that looks like a considerably more complicated looking movement. But, that's cool.
It's the same architecture, but as you can see, they did stuff to make it a little bit fancier. So there's this part is cut out here. You have all this. This is all this hand finishing. You don't have anything like that here.
Nice.
This is, it's not right. Like, I'm very impressed with this thing.
Yes, that's quite something.
Do we want an automatic version of this?
No.
It's just going to break. Just one more. I never liked self-winding tourbillons, not from the Germans, not from the Swiss, not from anywhere. It just somehow doesn't add up to me. There's something is this noisy, heavy rotor is just dangling there, just beating the whole movement up, and then you have this delicate little tourbillon just trying to do its job. I think it just doesn't add up to me to have this huge oscillating, rotating mass just shaking the whole thing up.
Can we compromise at a power reserve indicator? Maybe a little micro rotor?
Yeah.
Little micro rotor.
A little useless micro rotor that doesn't do anything. Sure.
like on the Rado.
Just makes a lot of noise and it just doesn't wind the movement at all.
Yeah, I think the problem is if you add an automatic assembly and a rotor, the rotor then has to look nice. Everything has to look nice. The architecture of the automatic assembly, it's only going to make it thicker, and then what do you really get for it? I don't know a lot of people who make a Chinese tourbillon their everyday watch. So on the times you want to wear it, go out and twist the crown, you can live with that. There's no date even on it. Just set the time and you're good to go. So I think this is kind of at the sweet spot. Adding an automatic assembly is going to make it thicker, more expensive, probably make the reverse side look worse from an aesthetic perspective. So keep it where it is. I feel like I kind of agree with David. This is kind of a happy price point. It's expensive enough that it gives them enough room to make something nice. But at the same time, this isn't like, do I want this or a Rolex? It sits at a different price tier. So you can get yourself something nice for about the same you'd spend on a Tudor, but it's a tourbillon with a little diamond on it.
904L steel, so it's corrosion resistant for all that time you're going to spend in salt water. 40 millimeters wide, 12.2 millimeters thick, 300 meters of water resistance. Proper sports watch. Should more people care about these types of, I guess we'll call them high-end Chinese elaborate sport watches?
Sure.
Yeah,
Why
I
not?
think they should care, even if they don't think, even if they're not for them. I think it's something important to recognize that it's becoming a more viable option. This isn't the $600 tourbillon that's going to show up real janky and you're going to be disappointed and be like, well, this is why you don't get the cheapest one. This is now at a level where if for someone who wants a lot of watch for not that much money, this is now a more viable option. So even if this isn't your vibe or you're not a tourbillon person, it should be taken more seriously as an option that's not going to completely let you down and that you might be happy with. It's not cheap, but it's also, I don't know, 1/100th of what other brand might charge for it.
I think what's important to add about this before we end is that unlike the Japanese, I get a $300 Japanese watch as much as I'd be interested in a $3,000 or $4,000 or $6,000 Japanese watch. But I still am not that into the few $100 Chinese sport watches. They might look fine. There might be cool ones from time to time. And there are some very special, we'll call them exceptions, Sega design that just for whatever reason for $300 does a great job. But your standard $300 Chinese diver may be fine, but will not have a design or any features that will particularly excite me. But you step it up a little bit, and that's a different case, right? So Citizen's $300 dive watch may not be interesting, but it's a good dive watch, right? It's good for what it is, as is their more expensive one. So I think that what you're seeing is that at a lower price point, for whatever reason, we're not as interested in some of the Chinese sport watches. Lifestyle watches might be different because you have some exceptions. But then that's where I think people aren't clear, is where to find the sweet spot for Chinese sport watches. And that's, I think, the interesting conversation where stuff like this enters, because it's clearly trying to be familiar but different. But I love the experimentation because they understand they're not quite trying to compete with the Swiss, while they're definitely trying to remind of the Swiss. And they're not trying to compete with the Japanese, even if they have similar price points. It's a very different category. And that's what I find so fascinating, because it really takes enthusiasm to understand. You're like, what are they even going for? If you don't already like the expensive watches, this will make no sense to you. That's the Peacock.
I think there's still room to grow in terms of design refinement, but they have come a long way, and I think we're slowly getting there. I could see them, just nail this segment in 3 to 5 years.
Peacock HAIYI Tourbillon Diver Watch. See the full review at aBlogtoWatch.com. That is it. We're out of time for this week's episode of A Blog to Watch Weekly. Hopefully we talked about enough watches, and looking forward to some of these other reviews coming. The Vacheron Constantin Twin Beat that I have incoming. Of course, the JLC Heliotourbillon. And is it just called the Freak X, or is there a new name for the Freak X that you're...
Freakier X?
X reviewing?
Freak X Diet 2. Diet Freak 2.0.
Diet Freak. like it now.
Let's wish Rick some electricity, some power, some 21st century conveniences, and then we catch you guys next week.
All right. Bye, everyone.
Cheers. Bye-bye.